Hello prime timers, thank you so much for being here. In today's video we're going to be talking about a fish right behind me here, and that is the glass cat. It is a highly overlooked fish that used to be so popular back in the 80s and 90s, but we're going to talk about why it should be popular again. Thanks for being here. So yes, I am super excited to bring you the species profile of the glass catfish. We have had these guys in our fish room for a very long time, and I love them. I had them growing up, and you don't see them as much as you used to, and that's why I wanted to talk about them today, because if you run across them in a pet store, they are an outstanding fish. They are from Thailand. Most of them are wild caught these days, but they are not considered to be endangered. The size of these fish usually going to max out right around 3 inches. The fish that you're seeing in here are full grown. They're somewhere around 4 or 5 years old right now. The coloration, as you can see, well, that's what's so cool about them. They're basically see-through, and I think that attracts them to a lot of people because they offer something completely different in your aquarium. Males and females are pretty much going to look the same, generally the same size, same body shape, and same coloration, which means there is none. Now, what's so cool about these fish is they are extremely peaceful. They are some of the most peaceful fish you will ever find. They're right up there with some of your small rasboras and your cory cats. So we're going to have to keep that in mind as we talk about these fish and how we're keeping them. Now, the other thing that's really cool about them is they're mostly a stationary fish, as you're going to see throughout this video, although they are capable of extreme speed when it's time to eat. I'm going to show you that in a few minutes, and when they're just moving around or if they get scared. But for the most part, they're stationary, even though they're constantly in motion, wiggling around. Now, lifespan for these fish, like I mentioned, it's not unusual to see 5, 7, even 8 years out of these fish, maybe longer for some. Like I said, the ones that you're looking at right here are at least 4 or 5 years old. The other nice thing is they're not super expensive fish, and so usually when you see them at a pet store, they're going to be right around $5 or so, and that's great because you want to keep them in groups. It's going to help them feel really comfortable. In this aquarium, we have 7. There's usually a couple that like to hang out on the right side of the aquarium. You see 5 of them here, but keep them in groups of at least 6. That's going to help them feel more comfortable. If there's only 1 or 2 of them, they're going to tend to hide a lot more. And also, if you've got other fish in the aquarium that are aggressive, they're going to hide all the time, stress out, and they're probably not going to live very long for you. And so please, when you're thinking about tank mates, think very peaceful fish. And so things like cory cats, rasboras, smaller neon type tetras, none of your bruisers like the Buenos Aires or the Columbia tetra, probably not a good mix. We have them in this aquarium with some snakeskin barbs. So if you've got peaceful barbs, and there are peaceful barbs like snakeskin barbs and 8-banded barbs and cherry barbs, those are all really good options. You're seeing them in here with some rainbow fish. They get along just fine. We've got some small geophagus all along the bottom, as well as some very large, very old clown loaches. And this combination has worked out very well. By the way, if you want to see some more options for tank mates for these fish, check out the description below. We've got lots of species profiles for you there. Other types of small, non-aggressive cichlids like rams, crebensis, nanochromis, pistos, those will all work just fine, but just stay away from aggressive fish. So no African cichlids, no fin nippy barbs like your tiger barbs, no Buenos Aires tetras like I've already mentioned, no sharks, red tail sharks, rainbow sharks. That's all the really bad ideas. So stay peaceful with these fish. Caring for them in terms of their water parameters, that's not that hard. So temperatures anywhere from around 70 to 80 degrees. We keep them right around 78 degrees, and they've been doing well here, like I said, for years. The pH, this is where the internet, I think, gets it really wrong. Often when you go to the internet, they recommend a pH between 6 and 7. I think between 6 and 8 is a more realistic range because, again, we keep these fish right around a pH of 8, and they live for years and years and years right at that pH without any issues. Water hardness anywhere around 4 to 12 degrees. We keep our GH and KH at around 10 degrees, so they've been thriving in those conditions. It's really important with these fish. Please make sure you have a fully cycled tank, no ammonia, no nitrite. If you don't know what that means, check out that video in the upper right-hand corner. It's one of the most important things you can know about fish keeping. Nitrate concentrations, we keep it less than 20 parts per million or so in the planet tank. Sometimes we let it creep a little bit higher, but this is not a fish that's going to do well if water parameters in terms of your no ammonia, no nitrite, and nitrates at least 30 parts per million or less. If they start to rise above that, you may have problems. Feeding these fish, again, this is another area where I know the internet will tell you, oh, they can be difficult to feed. I have never found that to be true, and I've been keeping these fish since the 1980s. We feed them a nice wide variety of North Fin foods, so all of the North Fin flakes, whether it's kelp flakes, cichlid flakes, community flakes, we have krill flakes. They also really like the Bug Pro. They go crazy, believe it or not, for live baby brine shrimp, frozen brine shrimp. So there is a lot of options when it comes to feeding these fish. Now, be considerate of your tank size as well. Usually around a 29 gallon is the bare minimum. Again, we want to keep these fish in at least a group of 6. They're super peaceful. Again, they don't tend to swim around all crazy a lot, but they are capable of being very, very quick when they need to be. And so 29 gallon to me is the bare minimum. I would really prefer, if I've got a nice size group, of at least a 40 breeder or a 4-foot tank, like a 55 gallon or a 75 gallon. Again, you can do the 29 gallon, but a larger tank is better, because ideally these fish are really awesome in even larger groups of, let's say, 10, 15, 20 or more. Some other things to consider when you're setting up your aquarium. This 125 to me is a really nice setup for these fish. And there's a few reasons for that. One, these are fish that are going to inhabit mostly mid to upper water. I know they're catfish, but they don't actually spend a lot of time at the bottom of the aquarium. So that means you're going to want to have a decent amount of open water swimming space for them. But at the same time, this is a fish that can absolutely benefit from having some space, some structure to retreat to if they're feeling a little stressed out. So plants, fake or real, rocks, wood. I find these fish really like to inhabit those areas when maybe the activity is a little bit too much for them, or they just get a little bit startled, which they do startle easily. In that way, I compare them to kind of like to a tinfoil barb or ballast shark. So just no sudden movements around the aquarium. Don't put glass cats in an aquarium where there's going to be a lot of activity right outside of the aquarium. But this is a really solid setup for them. Now, in terms of the substrate, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's gravel or sand. They don't interact with the substrate. So make that decision based on the other fish you see in your aquarium. And so for us, we've got geophagus, we've got clown loaches, and so that's why we did the sand in this aquarium. Even the substrate color in the background really doesn't matter for these fish because they don't have a color themselves, although they do tend to have a nice blue iridescence that will show sometimes, and I think that shows a little bit better when you've got a darker background. It certainly helps them feel more comfortable, and so that might benefit in terms of them being out a little bit more often, but open space, but also some structure for them to retreat to if they want to. Now, if you're thinking about breeding these fish, it's probably not going to work. I don't know of too many people who have successfully just bred these fish in an aquarium. Yes, there are farms out there that can use hormones to allow these fish to breed, but for the most part, you just get these fish, you enjoy them. It's not necessarily a breeding project, but these are awesome fish. They are really easy to care for. They live a nice long time. They look a lot different than most other fish you're going to find in your aquarium, which is a really cool kind of special interest. Very, very peaceful. If you run across them, if you haven't tried them in a long time, or if you've never tried them, give them a try. Just keep them in groups. Make sure you've got at least a 29-gallon aquarium. If you want more information on some great fish to keep with them, check out the videos in the upper and lower right-hand corner. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.